This is The Sports Source, presented by Bill Hotz and Associates, and by Renewal by Andersen, with your host, John Pennington.
Good Sunday morning. Welcome into The Sports Source, presented by Renewal by Andersen today. We appreciate you spending an hour with us on this Sunday morning. We're going to be talking about a lot of different things here. And as I mentioned, Renewal by Andersen brings you this first segment. The best windows and patio doors in America. They will decrease your energy costs, increase the value of your home. Visit their showroom. You see the address right there. Visit the showroom and look at all the different windows and doors. And what you find is it's an improvement to and an investment in your home. Renewal by Andersen, a twofer. Get out and check them out. All right, want to welcome in the round of panelists we have today. We got Josh Ward, Jimmy Hyams, Mike Strange, Chuck Cavaleris. Gentlemen, thank you all for being here this holiday week. Appreciate it. Hope you had a good Christmas, and we'll talk about New Year's a little bit later. Tennessee wrapped up the preseason part of its schedule yesterday with a 96-53 win over Tennessee Tech. Just throttled them. You would think that would be a cause for positivity and happy smiles, but when Rick Barnes is your coach, that's not necessarily what you get. He opened up his press conference, kind of went straight toward the defense isn't where it needs to be. He took shots at the defense, wasn't happy with where they are. Mike Strange, I'm going to open with you. Anybody else can jump in as well. But is that just Barnes being Barnes? Good coaches are never satisfied. They're always looking for something. Or do you think there are some issues with this team's defense?
Oh, I think it's mainly Barnes being Barnes, but yeah, with any team, there's always things you can improve on. I mean, how many times you've seen Nick Saban, starting out praising his team after a win? So that's Rick Barnes being Barnes, and the guys are used to it.
Thoughts? Anybody think that there are defensive inefficiencies?
I thought yesterday was kind of interesting. For a while, Tennessee Tech, end of the second half, was shooting 50%. But on the flip side of that, Tennessee had 12 blocks and they had 10 steals. They had a combination of 22 of blocks and steals. That's a lot.
That's pretty good.
It is pretty good. And there was a stretch where Tennessee Tech missed, 10, 12 shots in a row, and that brought their shooting percentage down. But I think Barnes was concerned the fact that the Tennessee Tech for a while was shooting right at 50%.
Yeah, and plus Tennessee Tech had a guard that was pretty quick. You kind of wish he could just stay. I mean, he blew by him a couple of times, and you gave up a crossover dribble a couple of times on the wing, and I know Barnes hates giving up the baseline. Yeah, at the same time, Tennessee was hitting 73% from the field. But what he's going to harp on is defense, and he knows that's what's going to win games for him.
John?
Yeah, and Rick Barnes knows he has a really good basketball team, I think, and he has to look for some things for his team to work on, and he knows, okay, big games, Grant Williams has to be there. Well, he wasn't there in overtime against Kansas, and he wouldn't have been there if they went to overtime against Gonzaga. So he's probably looking at things. I'm sure there are things on film that he talks in more detail about with his team, but they're not playing with Lamonte Turner right now, so you have depth concerns at guard. Those are just things you have to work through, and when you're playing lesser competition like Tennessee Tech, you have to look for some things before you get into a tougher stretch in the SEC.
Right, and while I think this team is, I think they've already proven this isn't a team that's probably going to get bogged down in overconfidence. I don't think their heads are going to get too big. At the same time, as a coach, you've won 7 in a row. You're 11-1. You're ranked number 3 in the nation. You want to keep the nose to the grindstone, even though this team is one that, by all accounts, coaches itself in a lot of ways. It runs its practice and that kind of thing. You still want to be able to keep these guys feet to the pavement a little bit, so I'm sure that's what Barnes is doing.
And another thing he pointed out too, John, in relation to defense, is there's going to be some games coming up just like Kansas where it was a one-possession game, just like Gonzaga. And you better have some defense there.
Any thoughts on how many minutes the starters played in such a blowout game? Let's go ahead and take a look. I've got the minutes for everybody yesterday. Schofield 29, Bone 26, 25, 24, 22, 21. Campbell, Fleshman, Jansen, those guys didn't get in the last 4 or 5 minutes. You were winning by 30, 40 points throughout this thing. Any surprise that they didn't clear the bench a little sooner, get these guys a little more time, or get some of your starters off the floor? I mean, when you're up 40 and you still got starters out there, my thought is, what if somebody sprains an ankle here? This is not the place to be going with these guys.
My thought was, you don't know when or if Lamonte Turner's coming back. So you talked about playing Lucas Campbell to get some depth at guard, right? But you didn't play him very much. I thought that was kind of interesting that you stayed away from that. So I thought you would see that a little bit more. If I were to try to figure out why he didn't sub more, it might be that you don't have a game for another week. So maybe he thought, okay, rest is not an issue right now.
And I
Maybe.
look at that graphic you put up there. Nobody played more than 29 minutes. Grant Williams only played 25 minutes. That's a little over half a game. So I was surprised. I thought we'd see some guys playing 32, 33 minutes. That's what I would have thought after the game.
Well, and you put Walker in once, and he got posted up and gave up a 3-point play, and he went right back to the bench. So in some cases, you do try and sub some, and then you say, no, if you're not going to do better than that, we're going to put somebody else in. Put the starter back in. But I saw Grant Williams get bowled over one time underneath the bucket. Schofield goes in and could have landed. You know, what if you come down on somebody's shoe, like you say, the ankle? That's the one thing I think that could beat this team as much as anything in a lot of ways, is one of your two or three key guys get hurt.
Well, again, we've talked about depth at guard all year. You probably went into the season one guard short, you would think. Now they're 11-1, third in the nation. So every team out there has some sort of flaw. But to me, the number one issue you got on this team is, the number one concern is injury. That's what derailed you last year with Kyle Alexander. So if I'm up 30, it's one thing to be up 20.
Yeah.
And you're up 35, 40 points. I don't want to see some of these guys out there. Josh, do you have a feeling on that, one way or the other?
To your point is make sure nothing happens fluky at the
Right.
end, because there wasn't a real minutes issue, as Mike was pointing out. If they were to lose Bone or Bowden, they would have a problem. That would be really problematic for this team. So they need Turner back. I think that's the real point as you look forward to, which we will with SEC play.
Also wanted to throw this out there as Tennessee wraps up the first part of their year. Now they've got 18 SEC games left. They've got one non-conference game with West Virginia in the SEC Big 12 shootout, or whatever they call it this year. The Big 12, they flip that every year. It's either SEC first or Big 12 first. So they got 19 games left. But if anyone thinks that the SEC slate is going to go as smoothly as this first part of the year did, this is a tremendous basketball team, and I'm not saying they can have an incredible run. But let's take a look at some numbers here. I went back. Since the SEC went to the 18-game schedule back in 2013, the average record of the SEC champion, assuming Tennessee wins the championship, which is a big assumption, is 15-3. Now, you'll see there, Kentucky and Florida, out of that bunch, out of all those teams, what is it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, out of those 8 teams that have won or tied for the title, only 2 made it to the Final Four, and it was the 2 that went 18-0. Both of them lost in the semifinals. But 5 losses last year won you the league, 2 losses in 2017, 5 in 2016, 4 in 2013. The only thing to take away, I think, if you're a fan, is you're going to probably have some bumps in the road. You're going to say, well, the number 3 team in the country shouldn't go lose to blah, Ole Miss or something. But it's college basketball. You're in the conference, Mike, it happens.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen it 1,000 times.
And don't forget, last year Tennessee started 0-2 in the SEC.
Right.
Yeah.
So-
One of those losses to Arkansas.
And they've only played 1 true road game so far. They're getting ready to go play 9 more.
Yeah, which makes a difference.
I think if they go 15-3, you'd take it.
Oh,
You would
yeah.
take that right now.
Absolutely. And I think if you go 15-3, you got a good chance of winning the SEC.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not an 18-0 conference. The league hit a lower point. It's gotten a lot better over the last few years. That's why I think you've seen the records the last couple of years the way they've been.
And what's interesting is, and we'll get into this a little later in the show, we're going to break down the entire schedule and look at where the tough spots are and that kind of thing. But the interesting thing is the league is better, but from a national rankings standpoint, you have 4 teams ranked. Most of these teams aren't ranked. And when you look at the NCAA's new net ratings, the SEC isn't so golden right now, but we'll talk about that when we go through the entire SEC schedule. That's a little later in the show. We've also got a lot of stuff to get to in terms of football and the like. And speaking of football, let's talk next about the offensive coordinator search. It goes on and on. There was talk this week about Steve Sarkisian. Some folks threw out the name Mike Yurcich again. Is there somebody else on the table? We'll discuss the OC situation next on the Sports Source.